This week we're diving into our pelvic tilt. So this one people have a lot of trouble with, basically because it's such a small movement. It is super, super important, especially for people that are doing repetitive things. So if you're sitting in a desk all day, often you end up in this position. So your pelvis is tilted posteriorly, and that causes flexion in your lumbar spine, which can sometimes cause a bit of stiffness and a bit of pain eventually. What we want to be able to do is just restore the range of movement there. So it's not that we want you always sitting up into this anterior tilt or always sitting posterior. You're going to sit, you're going to slouch, that's totally normal. What we need is to break up your day and restore the movement so that you can access it whenever you need. Because things like a deadlift, where you're hinging over, we don't want you to be stuck in this posterior tilt because you end up just flexing through your lower back and it hurts. Similar to when you're picking things up off the floor. If I want to pick something up off the floor and I'm always curling over, we're putting a lot of strain through here. Versus if I can allow my pelvis to actually anterior tilt, which is tilt forwards, keeping my lumbar lordosis, or that a little bit of extension in a neutral position as I bend over, I'm driving with my hips a lot more and I can access that glute strength rather than just, unfortunately, overloading my spine and getting a sore back at the end of the day. A pelvic tilt is way more about restoring that motion and giving you access to it in your day-to-day life than it is trying to keep you in a certain optimal position. So people that, you may have been told before, oh, you're too anterior or you're too posterior or too whatever, fine. We actually just want to restore mobility and access to that position. So we did this in week 1. Your first pelvic tilt is simply lying on your back with your knees bent, trying to go into a posterior tilt. We're tipping the bowl of water towards you, lower back pressing into the floor, and then the opposite. Keeping those ribs down, focusing on pelvic movement, creating space, so you should be able to fit your hand under that lumbar spine, under your lower back. That's your anterior tilt, and then coming back. We're going to go through that 10 times. So that is your anterior and posterior pelvic tilt. What we're going to add in as our next step is actually a hip hike. So if you do get a stiff lower back, you do get lower back pain, we're going to add in a bit more lateral movement. So what that means is we're going sideways. We're going to try and bring our hip up to our ribs. So if you were standing up, the hip hike look. Yeah, so we're creating side bending in our lower back. We're going to start with it on the floor. So after you've done those pelvic tilts, we're then going to keep our pelvis and lower back on the floor, and we're going to slide our hip up towards our ribs, come back to neutral, and then go the other way. If you get any pain on any of these movements, we just want to move in a pain-free range. So it's not that we want to completely stop. We're not trying to tell you to stop and just rest here. We're trying to find a range that you can do comfortably, and we're working through that. You will find that if you keep going, a little bit more space and a little bit more space will open up for you to increase that range as you continue. Next on our list, so if we want to progress this, we're going to do this in a bridge position. So hopefully from there, we're able to lift up into a glute bridge. Again, we're leading with our hips, creating that hip extension. We're not raising with our ribs. So hips are driving up first. And then in this position, dropping a little bit, creating that anterior tilt, lifting a little bit, tucking the tail under, creating that posterior tilt. Again, going back and forth to 10. So this is a level up. If you find the version on the floor tricky, this is definitely going to be very tricky because it's more of an active position. You're already engaging your hamstrings, and now you're asking them to not only engage, but lengthen and shorten. So if you can master those, great job. We're getting a little bit of burn in the hammy and the glutes are firing. Next, we're going to go into a kneeling position, as I did before. And if you can master it here, yeah, so we're extending through that lower back and tucking, extending through the hips here, creating that flat lumbar spine. Way more difficult to do. Again, it's just teaching you that control so that you have access to this movement. When you go to squat, for example, we're not losing our form into this position. You're able to control the bottom of that squat and stay nice and neutral through your spine. Really good way to get the lower back moving, especially if you're sitting all day, but if you're doing repetitive things, like myself, I'm leaning over a treatment table most of the day or standing nice and tall on the gym floor. Again, I do these for myself. My lower back needs a little bit of adjustment, it needs a bit of work. You want to create that space in your lumbar spine and in your pelvis to access movement. So another really great tool for this, if you've mastered all of those, and if you get a stiff lower back, great for this, is called a butt walk. Starting nice and tall, you might look a little bit funny, so do this one at home, not at work. And we're gonna just, one side at a time, walk on our sit bones. So you wanna feel that bottom of your pelvis where your hamstring attaches. That should be the part of your butt that contacts the ground. We don't wanna be out here shuffling along. You find you can't even get anywhere anyway. We wanna be sitting up nice and tall on our ischial tuberosities, your sit bones, and lifting and twisting so that we're creating posterior and anterior tilt on one side, because the pelvis actually moves one side at a time when you're walking. So we're getting that movement on both sides of the pelvis. We're getting movement in our lower back. It's including rotation, it's including side bending, and we're really trying to free things up. This week we did your hips. This week we did our pelvis and lumbar spine. Next week we're going on to our thoracics and a little bit more rotation based. Stick around, we'll see you next week.